Hello, you should be able to hear me, but Discord doesn't seem to be working with OBS at the moment, so you cannot hear Runon, and I have no idea why. I have absolutely no idea why. Not sure what's going on. Why it's not working. We are having fun. I have the desktop audio turned on. It should pick it up. I'm going to change Discord audio to, I don't know, something else. And I'm going to see if that works. If my colleagues can are able to hear me through it. Oh, now it's working. Now desktop audio I think is working. So, Renan, can you chat away? Renan? Oh, it's now Discord stopped working.
No, that's me. Sorry, I stepped away to get my headphones so I could limit the amount of echo that was occurring.
That's fine. It's working now. Hello, everyone. Right then. So you have me till about 8 o'clock. Then I need to go my time. Then I need to go get breakfast, and then I need to be on a train at 8:45 to get to Kure, which I'm looking forward to seeing today. Hopefully we get to do certain things. I have got interesting lighting options in this room, so I can either look like I am, I don't know, some sort of deity, or I can turn on all the lights and I can look like this.
Because I can really quickly take out Seneca Nero here.
Yeah.
5x5 reference. It's a 2-scale grading of transmitted audio. It's clarity and strength. I could have those reversed, but those are the two things it's missing. So if you have 5x5, you're getting full clarity of the transmission and full strength of the transmission.
I look tired. I'm sorry if I look tired. I'm not actually tired. I've actually just had some sleep for once. Might be because I actually am waking up because I actually have had sleep, but you know, I haven't drunk enough water yet.
That's probably why you look like you're about to fall over in a particularly stiff breeze. No divine winds for you.
Oh, actually though, and yesterday was an interesting day. We went around the memorials, and it was very it's very well done. It is very well done, and it is not a this was, oh, America bombed us scenario. Some people were suggested in some of the comments under the YouTube video, which is why I didn't do it. I wasn't going to do one originally. I just didn't want to see this under. It was a case of this is the consequences of decisions. This is the bad things that happened. And it was bad things that happened. Is someone collecting the questions and putting them into the group thing? Because I will open up my phone and start looking at them. I'm sure there is.
So far, the answer is no.
Okay.
Jonathan Moon has volunteered as tribute for Twitch.
Thank you.
Paul has volunteered for YouTube.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry,
and yet Knight pings Steve.
That's because I think Knight has Steve programmed in as into his system. Yeah. Ay, caramba. Right then. Well, life has been fun on this trip. I've been enjoying myself. We've had a lot of interesting food. There was already said there was a question about food, and we have been having the real Japanese food. We've gone into a lot of. Well, when I say we, okay, I have to draw a slight distinction between some of my colleagues and myself, because there are 3 of us who have happily gone into pretty much every Japanese restaurant and are trying to try different Japanese restaurants, including sushi and various other things. and there are two who have so far managed to avoid it. But we're not sure how long they're going to avoid it for, because the further we go away from Tokyo, the less and less there are the comforts of home for them to disappear to. So, yeah. On Fu...
And they've only had one HR incident yet so far.
Yeah. On the subject of Fu keeping up with us, he's done fairly well. He's been working bloomin' hard. We have broken him a few times. In nicest way, there are times when he has gone back to his hotel room to sleep. And there are, he has said himself that he is not quite sure how we keep this up and do this a month every year. It's a punishing pace. It is. Poor Dan has been is feeling punished, because usually him and Gareth share the duties of scouting the next day's museums with me. So that usually it's one or the other who comes with me to next day's museum, and sometimes it was even Dan C. And they would, and I'd always go, but because I've made the contact museums. This time it's been Dan the whole time, and even Dan is, how do I put this, suffering, and he is the one of us who does actual proper running as his exercise. Me, I've broken a pair of shoes. I have literally done on my trainers in. I had to buy some shoes here. I have got some. Actually, I have got something to. I will never be paid to advertise shoes. I know I'm never going to be lucky enough to get that particular donation. But I got some Skechers. They were on sale in the Skechers store, and these are slip-on Skechers. And I will say two things. One, you can tell I've been wearing them a lot because they're already starting to have a case of these have been worn, definitely been worn feel. But that's good because they're comfy. They are comfy as anything. These are slip-on Skechers. They slot on, you slip them on, slip them off, and they have just been very nice, very aerated, and lovely to walk in. And I have literally walked up a couple of mountains in those. Twice. Because the Japanese main policy on things seems to be that if it's a temple, it's got to be as close to God as possible, so it's going to be up a lot of steps. And if it's, which is fine, I have no objections to this. I did watch Fleet mildly pool into a puddle over it, but we have done it, and we survived. We survived. Japan is hilly. Yes, if anyone ever tells you Japan is flat, they never visited here.
Yeah, I have found that since moving to farm the sun for mana, because as we all know, electricity is functionally magic, and walking vaguely 5 miles a day, I feel better, but everything below the waist hurts.
Yeah, basically, I'm currently on paracetamol and multiple braces on my legs and knees. Well, basically, mostly on my ankles at the moment.
That might make your neurodivergence worse there, Doc.
It works. It works. Right then. Black Horse question: How did Mikasa survive Naval Treaty after Model 1 and Model 2? Lots of concrete. The fact it was encased in concrete, and the fact it's the closest thing the Japanese have to a ship shrine, as in a ship which is a shrine. And it's also survived various organizations having bright ideas about how to use it, including sticking at one point an aquarium inside it. It's not got engines. It's not got guns. Its turrets are all fake. There are lots of things on there which have been sold off and which are obviously not the original things, etc. And yeah, that's how it survived. That's how it survived.
And trying to make the Japanese sell or scrap Mikasa a stipulation of the treaties is a great way to ensure that Japan never signs up to the treaties.
It is, actually, and there's one thing, while we're live, I really should show this off. So you'll definitely know I have not been faking it. Left in its plastic wrapping to protect it a bit on the international flights. There you go. There is the fluffy, emotional support fluffy submarine. It is real, and it is coming home. And it only costs like 20 quid. And I did post some links to people who commented about the stores which sell it. And I think, I'm not sure if they do have an online presence, but they do certainly receive faxes, and you could probably order one by fax. It works. Now, Seneca, what was the most surprising thing you found out on this trip? Surprising. Oh, that's a tough one. Let me put it this way, I wasn't expecting yesterday, because I've studied so much about it, I wasn't expecting yesterday's museums to hit me as hard as they did. But I'd say the memorial which hit the museum, and surprising memorial which struck us out most, was the there is a little sailors memorial museum in a museum to merchant sailors in Kobe. And me, Dan, and Glyn visited there, and its major thing in the museum is just pictures of the ships which were sunk, grouped by year, and in order of them being sunk. And it is... it's sad. It's really, really hits you hard. Sean Martin, where's your glorious puppy dog? Both of my glorious puppy dogs are sitting at home, but I do have their representative that they send with me. So, this is who they send with me to keep me company as representative of them. Yeah. And, of course, also, I have Nuts, the squirrel which literally saved my life with his tail, so I presume he's a lucky charm, because if I was going to get my neck burnt, and instead the squirrel gets its tail burnt, I'd say that's a lucky that's something which saves your life, and was lucky, because something which you do that in half a second or less to this supposedly non-flammable squirrel's tail. Imagine what I could have done to the back of my neck. So yeah, I think that's guaranteed to be. That is definitely a lucky charm. Proxy poodle, yes. But yeah, the museum in Kobe, you will not see a lot of information about it on terms of the museum, the Merchant Mariners Museum. Go find it. If you're in Kobe, find it. It is going to hit you hard. And it is such a simple presentation. And that is something I would say the Japanese are really, really good at. Very simple presentations, very, very hard-hitting museums. And it works well. It works well. Matthew Ballerins, how would you design a modern multi-role sloop for patrol, special forces support, counter, FISC, MCM, RZ service? Look, I've interested in this there's been lots of comments about this, what I've been talking about, and people keep going, well, it can't be done because of the LCS project. The LCS project is how to do it, I would say, not so much badly as how to do it when you are not so bothered about the outcomes and more bothered about it being almost a work project you can spread around. The example I would give is Stanflex, is what the Danish Navy have come up with, and for them, the Rasmussen class are a very good example of what you could achieve. And yeah, it's just, Frank, if my sister turns up in the chat, ask her to do that. She'll do it. But no, it's a case of, if you look at Stanflex, it starts off, and this is again what I point out with the Japanese railgun project, what I point out with the Ottomalera 76, is they start off with very modest aims, and they build from there. They don't start off going, we want all singing, all dancing immediately, and then when you don't get it, go, oh, it's been a failure, we should cut all funding. They start off by going, let's do something simple, let's do something let's do something basic, and let's work it out. And It works. As a methodology, it works. That's all I can say. So I would say Stanflex, Nunderus, and class are the good ones to go for a model for a future sloop. I spent a whole line time whenever we're talking about batch 2, batch 3 rivers, I go fit them with Stanflex. Buy the Danish system. In the nicest way, we bought the Type 31 hull design, well, the original version of Type 31 off the Danish. We're now selling it back to pretty much everyone, it seems. Because we have the more yard capacity than they do, so we can do that. That's the good thing about the British. And I would say for pretty much everyone, it's just look at the Danish, look at the Stanflex system, and go, yeah. Let's be honest, if you're building a sloop-sized ship, Stanflex works. It's basic, but it works, and it comes with a lot of options, including, I think, an Otto Malera 76mm, which is quite a useful thing for a sloop to have.
At this rate, the Italians are going to be the single source supplier for about 3/4 of the world's navies.
Yeah, because no one else is producing a decent 3-inch gun, and it's let's be honest, you're going either the BAE 57mm or the Otto Malera 76 at the moment for those sort of weapon systems, and that's why the British went 57 for the Type 31s, not 76. Let's be honest, it's BAE's product, so of course we went with them. It's the same with 40mm. And yet still, I would much prefer the Royal Navy have put 3 76mm mounts on the Type 31s and gone, yeah, try and get past this. Black Horse, when was Incasso cased in concrete? 1920s. It's quite a long procedure, if I remember correctly, so it's not done with a quick pour. I'd have to look up the specific date, but it's the 1920s. It's response to the Washington Treaty. Bowman Boy. What influence could an aerial and naval intervention by the United States, using force already in theatre on the side of the SAF, have on the Sudanese civil war? Could accelerate its end? It could do, but it could also complicate it massively. If you let's just say, the Sudanese civil war is like most civil wars. There are lesser shades of grey. And
Stafford, questions are closed.
I say that in the nicest way. There are lesser shades of grey. That is most civil wars. I'd also say if you want to pick a side and intervene on it, you're going to give them an overwhelming firepower advantage. But, and this is the problem with it, but giving them an overwhelming firepower advantage and giving them victory short term might mean their opponents just disappears and doesn't give them victory long term, and they don't get credit for victory in the side of their people. They get, oh, you won because you were backed up by external forces. So you can actually end up delegitimizing them and delegitimizing their victory, which can mean that they end up having to fight another war longer on or further on, or it turns into a guerrilla war. And that can be a problem. So whilst we could intervene on side and we could guarantee victory for any side we intervene on, that can also create a lot of problems. So you have to be very careful about how you do it. Often, it's far more sensible to make it a few deniable pinpricks than it is to make it an actual open intervention. That's usually the better way. And that's me speaking without actually having kept up to date on the latest news, because I've been running around Japan so much and have been trying to adapting to Japan so much and the way they deal with things. I am in a business hotel. This is very much a business hotel. It has an onsen. It does have an onsen. And I was told by Glyn yesterday that its company has an interesting reputation, and I went, yeah, it was the cheapest hotel which was available that was up at our standards in Hiroshima. That's all I looked into it, honestly. At the point at which we were booking, that's what we cared about. Right. Knights of everyone. With British shipbuilding plans always long term, just how many decades does the British plan for? Oh, good lord.
You asked this
Okay.
last week.
I'm very sure I answered this last week. They have a theoretical plan which can sometimes go out 5 decades. They have a stated plan which will probably go out about 3 decades, and they have an honest plan which we can actually time to do, which maybe go us out a decade if we're lucky. Thank you, Heafish. Sorry I haven't been doing as much on Twitch as I normally do while traveling, but it's okay, this is the first hotel I've been in which has had a LAN hardwire connection. And I hope you're noticing the difference in the quality. I really do. I hope you're noticing the difference. Hope it's better. Oh, onsens are lovely. Yeah, onsens are lovely. You know, I've taken. Dr. Dan has finally joined me to go visit an onsen. Otherwise, I'd be going solo, and it's honestly half the reason I managed to get through here. Rather like going through Scandinavia, the half the reason I got through Scandinavia was the lovely saunas, and half the reason I'm going to get through Japan is going to be the onsens, which have kept my old joints going. Laraines, why does Sea Harry never get a buddy tank or electronic attack variant? Mostly because the British relied on pods. They relied on pods.
And the U.S. had intruders, and then prowlers, and then growlers for that.
Yeah. The British relied on pods, the Americans had other aircraft for it. Alpha, not nudity doesn't bother me. Nice way, I've spent enough of my life around Royal Marines. Alpha, if nudity bothered me, I would, yeah. Yeah, you spend enough time around Royal Marines, you get used to nudity. It doesn't bother you anymore. Oh, don't know if I showed you these the last time. These are cool. I picked them up in Yokosuka. They are, of course, Yamato, Shinano, and Musashi. And you can get a modern one for the IGN, but I haven't got it. But it was only 1,200 yen, so that was like £6. So worth it. Kind of like my Micro Machines fix, but cooler. And let's see, what else have we picked up? Oh, we've got a few of the medals and various other things. I have been picking up various charms as I go around at temples. I also got this from Mikasa, a fridge magnet. I bought this one myself. And I've been picking up various charms as I go out to various temples and various things to do, because, it's nice to have them. So yeah. Japan's been cool. Aurora, little cousins, yes, don't worry, nice the way they've heard the stories. In fact, a goodly proportion of my little cousins are descended from Royal Marines, so in the nicest way, they're used to their fathers, and nothing I say about them doing that will disturb them. Right then. Nathan, I'm not sure if questions are still open. If they are
closed.
They'll be picked up. Knights
They are currently closed.
If the Falklands had a decent defensive force, is an RAF air base and naval presence, how much Argentine resources have to be expended dealing with them before a land invasion can come again? Massive amount. Let's be honest, the Royal Navy had managed to deter the Argentinians once before by just turning up with a submarine and a frigate and a tanker in the area. And I think if there's anything more in there, the Argentines have trouble. If there's a submarine there, then in I suppose the submarine just goes out to the LPDs, and a lot of Argentinian amphibious troops get sunk. You basically, if there's a submarine on station, there is the Argentine invasion of the Falklands doesn't work. If there is a base like we have built up today, the sheer amount of force they need is going to be massive. HMS Verdun, does visiting us Hiroshima respect your view of what happened? Um, Look, it made me. I have to say, if it's going to change anything, I long ago came to peace with the idea, and even more here came to peace that the people in charge didn't see another option. And honestly, the weapons are devastating enough that I think they, in a nice way, none of them want to harm children. And when you see the cancers and all the things in the kids that are produced from it and all the stuff that comes after it, that's not something professional soldiers or officers want to do. It's not something politicians, anyone wants to do. They don't want to go kill kids under any guise, and I don't think they would have done it if they didn't think it was the only option, the only viable option when they were looking at the information they had available. And that's what they were going with, the information they had available and what they were being told. That's the information they had to go with, and that's what they made a decision based on. But it did make me this. The next time when someone suggests tactical nukes are in any way, shape, or form a good idea, I might be even more vicious with them than you have ever seen me on YouTube. Ever seen me on YouTube or anything. Because no. I am not against keeping nuclear weapons in the arsenal. There are reasons, legitimate reasons to keep them in mutually assured destruction. You can't put the genie back in the bowl. And there's a couple of others as well, in case the people outside of the Earth turn out to be, if we eventually meet them, turn out to be less friendly than we hope they will be. All those things are good reasons to keep them. But no to tactical nukes. Just no. No. I don't think anyone forgets that 96831. I don't. Not anyone who seriously studies the topic. Ramol, in terms of the NF-90 frigate program, do you think it's what the FREM frigate is supposed to be? Do you think it's possible for NATO navies to adapt the NFR but configure to their need? The thing is, the NF-90 R90 was supposed to produce multiple options. It was basically the horizon, then it led to various other options produced by other navies, and lots of people were involved. It's basically a nice idea to try and standardize. But the thing is, at a certain point, your divergence is not just in terms of weapons fit. Your divergence is in terms of engineering needs and things you want to do. It's the things that happen in this sort of modern time scale we're talking about is that people look at things and go, okay, this has got an engine, therefore it's the same, and it's got, it can do this. No, it's not. If I want to do a long distance cruise and operations, I need space aboard to maintain things. I need space for the crew to maintain themselves. I need more gym space. I need better accommodation space. I need all those things, and that makes a very different hull. And it's one of the interesting conversations which is had, especially over the future, the current, the recent video I did on destroyers, in that the amount of people who believe that actually it's far more significant the space increase you'd have over the Type 82 if you added an extra C-dart launcher, those sort of things. There would be a space increase, but the thing is that space increase would also functionally allow for a functionality increase in terms of accommodation space and other things, which would actually be very useful for itself and would allow it to do more of the command role, which would be helpful. And there are actually advantages. It's one of those weird things that the Type 82 was at the pinch point where it didn't have enough space to justify itself to one section to a larger section of government, but had too much space to justify itself to the treasury. So it was too big and expensive to justify itself versus a Type 42 versus the treasury, whereas something which was bigger and much more powerful, and therefore the treasury thinks that, well, we may be able to get away with less hulls, so less crew, and we could save money that way. Well, if it's bigger and more powerful, they can do that, and actually just against justified to treasury the other way. So it's at the Type 82 is at the HMS Bristol's at that pinch point. At that pinch point, it just is. And the NF90 is R90 is a good idea, but it just was never going to actually work. Because the Navy divergent needs of what they need for their shipping was just too different. Yeah, sort of looking at it, you'd have been better to start off with, okay, we want to standardize the weapon systems and the sensors, because if you could standardize the weapon systems and the sensors, and everyone else built the hull they needed, that would work. Then you would standardize a lot of logistics. That's more what you need. They tried to standardize everything, and once again, they tried to go for an everything included project. It sounds great, but realistically, what are the things we can standardize? The weapon systems and the sensors. And the command and control system so they can interface with each other. That would have worked as a standard thing. And then leave the engines, hull designs, all the rest to each individual nation happily. Eddie Rudolph, had the Germans won the Battle of Messines and captured Paris, possibly knocking France out of war, what does Britain do, assuming generous peace terms? If the Germans managed to capture Paris and knock France out of the war, I'm not sure if capturing Paris would knock France out of the war in World War One. World War One is very different than World War Two. You have to remember that, and the French have a lot of contingency plans from the experience of the Franco-Prussian War, and that includes getting the government out of Paris, which they did. In functionality, I think, honestly, if France drops out the war and Russia's still fighting, and Britain is still fighting, then things become very complicated. There might be a peace treaty, but it would be the kind of peace treaty where both sides are rapidly rearming. And there's going to be a war very shortly. So it's kind of a case of no matter what happens in that scenario, I don't think you get a peace. I don't, because if it's basically France has collapsed, then what you might end up with doing is Britain doing a total blockade of Europe. Britain could run a blockade of Europe quite happily and withdraw the army, and that's going to cause trouble enough. It's basically going back to Napoleonic War strategy, long-term strategy, and Britain using its economic might to prop up other powers, i.e. Italy and other nations doing land fighting. It would be interesting to see what would happen. It would be. I'd have to read a few more books to try and work for it. But yeah, I think that's quite a big question. Matthew Blair Rains, is there a role for tilt-rotor reconnaissance drones on corvettes, frigates, and destroyers? I wouldn't be surprised if we see some tilt-rotor drones at some point, mainly because it's cool, and people like to experiment with what's cool. But I would also say justify the need versus regular rotary drones, and push prop drones that you can just catch in nets. That's the problem. It's justifying the need versus the requirement. But I still wouldn't be surprised because it's cool.
Yeah, they can also, for many of the benefits of your tilt rotor systems, the drones they're going to take that are going to launch from these things are usually light enough they could go back to catapult launch.
Yeah.
and even if they wind up considering them expendable, semi-expendable, as a result, they don't necessarily need the extra weight and mechanical complexity for tilt rotor. Not to mention increased maintenance and yada yada blah blah.
Black Horse. How important were the German codes before Jutland? Okay, normally I'd say they're very, very important, and they are very important. But let's be honest, there's also that classic thing of a naval officer who stuck his oar in and asked the wrong question of the code breakers, and then send the wrong information off to Jellicoe, and that causes all sorts of issues. It's a case of, yeah, just don't be stupid. But basically, the question, the other counter signals actually undermine its usefulness. They just do. Calvin Gasberg, opinion on the Russian AK-176. It's a fairly decent 3-inch gun. I'm not quite sure about some of the acclaimed stats, because I think they might be padding them a little bit. Mainly because I look at the stats which are achieved by Otto Breda, and how much research and development they've put into it, how much time, and then I look at how much time and effort the Russians have managed to put into their system, and they claim pretty much exactly the same capabilities. And I go, well, there is a possibility they got really lucky. There is. There is also the possibility that they're padding it a bit. Okay.
Padding their stats? No, it can't be.
It's like everything in life.
Never heard of before.
You design to deal with your enemy's claim stats and what your intelligence suggests they might have as their maximum capability. And then, when it comes to war, you find out whether those estimates were correct or whether they aren't. Have you seen the Type 56 YouTube channel? I'd love to see a collab on the People's Liberation Army. No, but I'll look it up. Okay. How do you find the non-tipping world? I'm from Britain. We tip optionally. It's kind of normal. Not being able to tip at all feels a bit cruel, because there are sometimes you get exceptional service and you go, I'd like to give you a couple of quid here. Or, that sort of thing. But, that's fine. The people I most often tip at home in the UK are delivery drivers, believe it or not, because I know they're not getting paid properly.
As an American, my rule of thumb is if you are bringing me my food, I will tip you. Everything else is based on service received.
Yeah. Ramol, what is your opinion on the USN integrating Patriot Pack-3 missile onto the Mark 41 Aegis system? Do you think it'll make a missile supply line easier and increase the Aegis capability? I think it gives them options. Honestly, I think it gives them options. And I think long-term, the Americans are looking to try and move to a one-size-fits-all missile solution to ease supply line logistics. But I can also see that becoming, how do I put this politely, also becoming a problem in that you end up with a monopoly supplier. And if you consider the power of Raytheon and various others in US procurement, because they are de facto monopoly suppliers of certain components, I would be cautious about ending a scenario where there is a single missile producer, a single aircraft producer, a single this. Yeah, you don't want to be in that. You almost had that coming about with Lockheed Martin and the F-35, and this is why I wasn't surprised that Boeing got the option they did. Because that makes sense. It makes sense to try and spread it out, because you don't want to end up with a single source supplier. You'll then find yourself in the same position as Britain, where basically BAE can write what they want down on the paper, and you have to pay it. Your question is, I want components. Yes. Are they produced by BAE? Yeah. Okay. How much are you charging? because you have pretty much a single source supply, because someone decided that would be more efficient. So that's what the British industry should aim for. And the actual government thought that was a great idea. Yeah. They were smart. If the Washington Naval Treaty article that banned the sale or gifting of ships from the treaty signatories had been rejected, won't ships sold off as surplus not be on borrowed time, given they're old? It depends what they're being used for. Who's using them and what the value.
Last week.
Yes. I'm sure that question was asked last week as well. Yeah, basically it depends on what they're used for and who's using them. They're useful. They're useful. They can be useful. Alpha Aurora, how did you annoy Nightbot? Stop spamming the caps. Don't run into Nightbot's porn bot productions. Just don't run into that. Ramol, in terms of video on the County-class destroyers, do you think the USN had a better solution and tech jump than they are in terms of DG, since they use Sherman-class hull for Chuck Adams? They certainly had a lot more going on, and I think the real trait is the Americans had the destroyer leader designs going through, and that really does help them. Admittedly, that then gets turned into Tychos, but we'll leave that to one side. There was an answer last week.
Well, tonight you need to listen to the VOD with more alertness.
And you answer the same question again. What is the silliest thing you've received in comments this week? Not sure. There's one. I haven't really been tracking the comments as much as I normally do. I'm going to go back and read them. Read from. Hey, Bitchin. I've got to go back and read through them. Right. I think we can open up questions again for a second. Paul has said questions are open.
Thank you, Paul Bot.
So,
I have currently seemingly fixed a severe clog in my tiny 3D printer.
I'm surprised Foxo isn't here and asking me to talk about things.
They're not where they typically are. I can see what Foxo's doing. Dragon appears to be doing a whole lot of nothing right now. I can drop him a ping if you'd like.
Oh no. It might make Fleet. I'm fairly sure Fleet is up and awake and worried that they might be here, because I might tell he is currently willing to offer virtually anything for me not to tell the Shipshape HR rep, that is Foxo, exactly what's happened.
Okay, they are paying attention. I can tell you that much because I just got a DM from one of them.
Oh. Lions, please tell all. I feel I should, if I'm going to consult anyone first, it has to be the Shipshape HR rep, and then we go from there. It might involve dolls. It might involve me pointing to places on dolls.
Also, I would like to point out that I have raised Fleet's offer by offering skilled labor. Which Fleet, for all his capabilities, is not.
Okay. Yes, for all his capabilities, he tries very hard. Is it funny or sad? It's traumatizing.
Castanea, are you in Virginia, or are you doxing me? Not that you can really dox me because all my records are public, but... Also, Jay Jones's scandal is not driving. It is homeboy decided to text memes to a Republican congressman 3 years ago.
Also,
that were then taken out of taken out of context.
Yeah. Also, I do find it funny the way people. people keep complaining about my chair back home. I've got to fix it. I know, but I can't find. As you all know, I'm in a pursuit of some sort of grease I can stick on it that's going to help it, not going to be licked off by the dogs, and B, was given to me by my mum on my 16th birthday as my 16th birthday present. So I kind of don't want to get rid of it. It might be now 20 something plus years old, but it's kind of a gift from my mum from years ago. Well, I did laugh one comment on the Venom Community, which was, "Oh, he lives with his mother and sister, so don't expect him to have money." So going, technically, my mother and sister, my mum lives in with with me and my sister because we own the house, and I know because I paid. I'm as soon as the money and sales of various things have gone through, I'm going to be paying the mortgage every month. But I wasn't getting into that. But I do find it funny the way some people, they don't react well. They seem to think everyone should be living on their own. And I've never understood this concept. If I lived on my own and I was away like I am now, where would my dogs be? They'd have to be in kennels, or I'd have to move them house to somewhere else. Whereas living with family, because I don't have a significant other or partner or something like that, my dogs stay in the home. And the other option is to have a life without dogs. Yeah, when I was 16, I got a chair from my mum. Yeah. That was my mum's one of my mum's presents. It was I got my first office when I was 16 in the house, and she gave me the chair as the gift. I got the desk I still use. I nicked from a skip at Kingston University. You know, I like having my dogs. I like all those things. Yeah, yeah. Also, that's this thing is, again, and you all saw this during. For those of you who were watching me when I started in COVID, you realised that the reason I was at home with my family is because my mum and sister both have very severe asthma, and basically I was their block between them and COVID. I was the one that's sort of doing all the shopping and all those things, and yeah, and nicest way, if they had problems, I'd be over there all the time anyway. It just makes life easier living and having the annex to myself. So, nice to hear everyone. If the 1920 Sodax had gotten built, would they and the four Colaborators be the ones to be modernised in the 1930s with all their free physics standards on the chopping block to be replaced? Yes. Yeah, if you got a load of 16-inch gunships, you improve those first. They're useful. Question. Oh,
Wow, that's a lot of Photoshop on that picture. That is a tremendous amount of Photoshop on that picture.
Steve, let Nathan put his question in because he tried earlier and he missed, and then he's tried again and he's missed.
I got it.
Just grab it. We'll be nice to Nathan because Nathan both times has managed to just come in just after the questions are closed. So we'll be nice to Nathan. Mosh Shaw, what thing in Japan has most inspired you to make a 1 hour video? Well, Mikasa is going into a video on the 6.6 fleet and doctrine around it, and some of the ideas and developments of it, and how that's affected the modern Japanese construction. I want to do a whole video about Japanese doctrine of construction, how it's evolved from the 6.6 fleet and evolved through, etc. And it's going to start off and use Mikasa as it, because she's a really good example, and the modern Japanese ships are a really good example. And that's probably going to be one of the Christmas specials this year. And I'm honestly tempted to do something about about submarines and SSKs since the end of World War II, because now I've seen a couple. I've seen various O's around the world, and we're hopefully going to see a Japanese submarine as well today. And we saw the Neptune in Sweden, and I just look at them and go, there is a lot of stuff going on here in submarine design and SSKs, and it's interesting to work through. It's interesting to work through. Also, I would say, the point I've been making a lot is that you have, in Britain, whilst the armed forces are being very professional in training, you have the government talking a lot about preparing for possible wars. in Japan, when you start wandering around and looking at their bases, they actually are preparing for possible wars. There is a very different tone and capability we're talking about in terms of force structures. And Japan is very much down there. Bone Boy. What are the differences in flag facilities between amphibious, surface, and aerial warfare, and for flag officers coordinating all domains? Basically, it's the sheer volume of screens and personnel you need, and what kind of other specialist personnel you need. It's basically, if you're coordinating one domain, you can probably coordinate it from a destroyer. And most one destroyers with their CICs, you can probably coordinate air defense or these things from them. But if you are coordinating amphibious operation, then you need to coordinate sea movement of sea assets, land forces assets, and air assets. You basically quadruple the number of screens you need, because you need to also be deconflicting between them all. And the number of staff you need working at those various screens, and a huge mapping table. And if you ever walked around Albion and Bulwark, if you're lucky enough to do that, you'll see they had a huge command facility, and there was a reason for that. And if you're doing the lot, then you need more. This is one of the reasons why basically multi-domain commands have mostly moved ashore. Because unless you have a giant ship like the Blue Ridge that the Americans have, it's functionally not really viable to do from one command center. You can coordinate aircraft and strikes from a carrier, you can coordinate amphibious operations from an amphibious ship, but if you're coordinating amphibious operations and airstrikes and all the things, and you're trying to do it as a joined up command, you're probably going to be ashore. Seneca Nero. What was the coolest museum so far, except the Kobe one? Mikasa. Mikasa, that probably goes with Derrick. That's a Derrick. Honestly, the one where I saw my colleagues most act like children was in again, in another museum in Kobe. And Kobe was really, really good. The Maritime Museum at Kobe, in the Kwaski exhibition. Where my colleagues got to fly planes, drive trains, sit on jet skis, do all sorts of things. They had an absolute whale of time. They really did. Team Locker, what local soft drinks have you enjoyed? Various peach drinks actually have popped up occasionally on my choice list. I have tried some of the stuff from some of the vending machines, including one which I picked because I thought it would have electrolytes in it, only to find it contained carrots, grapes, peaches, and oranges, and was probably the single strangest tasting liquid I have ever drunk in my life. I was, though, however, walking down from all the way up there. We had walked up, and okay, here's what happened when we walked up to the memorial on the hill on the mountain. Me and Dan looked at it on the map, and it said it takes 20 minutes to walk it. And we thought, oh, okay, we've still got our backpacks from the day of travel. We can do this. It's a 20-minute walk. We are both fit. We are both healthy, relatively speaking. 480, mostly disjointed steps. They are designed so you cannot get a rhythm. So you have to take each one. And it's a path of pilgrimage. It's a holy path. And that's how I describe it. Up through the shrines. We were overtaken by a little old grandma, which was even worse. I mean, honestly, we both our morale suffered for that one. I came far too close to collapse. Honestly, I thought I was more recovered from pneumonia than I was, but it turns out the doctors are correct. I am not as recovered as I want to be, and I still have time to go to recover. It was devastating to both our morale. You have to remember, Dr. Dan does running regularly as an exercise. He does running regularly. And he is fit and healthy. And He literally couldn't sit down because he was aching too much. I was sitting down on the steps a couple of times, and we got overtaken by this little old lady, and it was just no. And the thing is, yeah, she probably does. She possibly does it every week, and so is well used to it. But oh, good lord, it just destroyed our morale. It just destroyed us. I would like to say this also: Japanese grandmas are something special. They are really cool. We also tend to use the grandma rating for where we're going to dinner. If me and Dan are wandering around a food court, no, the place which has the young kids in, we don't care about those. No, no, no. We look for the place which has the grandmas in it, because if they have the little old ladies happy, then it's going to be good food. It's going to be a decent price, and it's going to be good food. Because those little old ladies will not suffer any fools gladly. They will destroy anyone who tries to give them bad food. They will literally annihilate them. So yes, we go there. But that's the answer to the soft drink one. Castanea, how long before ships start to trade helicopters or drones on ships that carry more than one helicopter? Oh, they're already doing that. But you need a helicopter for personnel transport and for leading the amphibious. I think actually what you're more likely to see at some point is actually increased hangar space for more drones. This was the interesting conversation again when this was having on the battleship versus cruiser, and I keep arguing that actually what they're talking about is a cruiser. I'm sorry, I know politicians prefer the term battleship, I know everyone seems to prefer the term battleship, but what they're actually talking about, when they're talking about the ships they're all talking about and all discussing, and this goes doubly for Drakenfell, and I've told it to his face, is a cruiser. They are talking about a cruiser. They are literally defining, by definition, a cruiser. They keep calling it a battleship. That is a different term, but we'll leave that to one side. They keep talking about cruise. I think what we're going to, when we're talking about ships that size, you're going to see multiple crewed helicopters and multiple uncrewed assets, and they're going to be hunting as wolf packs, as anti-submarine warfare wolf packs. I could see you having a crewed helicopter go out with 2 to 3 uncrewed rotary systems coordinating together, all using their dipping sonars, all dropping sonar buoys, all able to drop torpedoes, and a submarine going, oh, I've got one there, I am bracketed. Because that's what they'll be doing them for.
Bowmeal boy. It costs you nothing to not say that. It would have cost you nothing to just keep your mouth shut and let me live my life. And yet, this is what you decided to do.
Walter Brodus, any news in Japan about latest China versus Philippines cash? It is being covered by the news out here, but let's just wait, it's such rapid-fire Japanese that I am having trouble keeping up. I have reached a level where I can sort of understand the Japanese, and I'm getting it right about 75% of the time, so that's why I say sort of understood. I still am not that great at speaking it. But I'm trying my best to chat away with people and understand.
Well, if you can sort of understand the Japanese, then you're doing better than most of the interwar U.S. Navy high command.
Yeah. Their news is fun, though. Their news is both in terms more serious and more energetically amusing than American news, even. Alpha Aurora. Hypothetically, if Royal Navy ships get damaged in Asia fighting China, can they be repaired by Japan or Korean shipyards? Yes. Probably be Australian, but we'll leave that to one side, because if you're at a level which you're damaging the Royal Navy, the war's probably already been going on for a couple of weeks, and yeah. Poseidon 7307. Canada starts laying down sloops 2,000 tons at 2 to 4 a month in 1936. What armaments would you fit to them, and how many might it handle the U-boat threat? Basically, you'd fit them up as sloops, and you've got a limited number. You're only limited to a certain number of guns over 3 inches, so they're gonna probably get up about 4-inch guns. That's probably gonna be it, and you end up with depth charges, all those things. But you probably don't need to be 2,000 tons. They can probably be about 1,500 tons or less. Mosh Short, thoughts on the Venezuelan Navy? Good luck if they try to do anything silly. They have some interesting assets, but honestly, they have been underfunded, undermaintained, and underlooked after, under-facilitated for such a long time that, yeah, it's more going to be a case of how inventive and how loyal they are than what they actually potentially achieve. Fisher, 1906. If the Washington Treaty sets capital ships to 45,000 tons with the same 553 ratio, how does that set the IJN procurement? At that point, the IJN would have a massive. I did actually do that in an equitable treaty. I did that in an equitable treaty discussion, and I did go into all this in all the equitable treaty vids. But basically, the tonnage allowance means the Japanese do get to build some ships, and that's the thing. They still get to build some ships. And the thing is, if you're building 45,000 ton ships, pretty much you are wrecking all the older ships. So you're going to replace them all. If 45,000 tons is your limit, then your 20,000 tons, 25,000 ton battleships are not really going to match in against those. The speed advantage, the firepower advantage you can include on 45,000 tons. The really interesting thing, though, is if you therefore have a sort of rolling change rate and everyone changes over to 45,000 ton battleships, then by the time you get to World War II time period, the nations which are starting from nothing are in real trouble because 45,000 tons gives you a fast battleship with 9 16-inch guns. No, a Seneca, no, let's clarify. There was a Venezuelan ship which got sunk by an uncrewed cruise ship. But it is ice-breaking. It is an ice-breaking, ice-rated cruise ship, so it had capability. What happened HR themed? I'm sorry, I have to have this conversation. If I'm going to have it with anyone, it has to be with an HR rep first. That is, of course, Foxo.
And the union rep may need to be there as well. The shop steward may need to be there as well.
But involves fleet. Colin Cameron, question. Have you been to one of the traditional tea blenders yet? The blends make excellent presents. No, I haven't, but there again, me and Dan are still wandering around, and seeing as we're the only two who don't seem to be affected by jet lag, whereas my colleagues certainly are affected by jet lag, we'll sort of wander. We might wander into one. Wilson triplets. Does anything significant change for Japan if Yonai's cabinet doesn't dissolve until January 1941? Yes. The likelihood of going on a war course does change dramatically. Because he's going to adopt different policies for things, and there's also the possibility that, how do I put this? He might try a deal of weapons for fuel with the British. And let's be honest, the British would have probably taken it in 1940. After the fall of France, if Japan is offering ammunition in terms of fuel and trade for fuel, the British probably would take that. The British would have a conversation with the Dutch East Indies about supplying them fuel. And the Americans might not like it, but it would be a case the British would go, well, we need all the ammunition we can get, and this supply can go straight to our forces in North Africa. And it's coming from a direction which is... And also, if the Japanese offer to escort the delivery of it, well, that's even better. Dan Snipe, how are water drones...
I'm just looking at Knight's response, and I think the well-developed Anzac yards are probably not as far away from the Chinese umbrella as you may want them to be in the event of a hot war.
No, Perth, Sydney, they're all pretty far. Yes, there are. Yes, the Chinese do have stuff which could reach them, but it's going to be very, very long range assets, and it's going to be going to go a very long way, or which is going to put at risk of interception. It's basically, it's a case of the missile options are going to be ballistic variety, and the moment you start firing ballistic missiles with that range, they have similar. You risk other things, as I've talked about before. When you start firing off proper ballistic missiles, even if they are third dimension, they do look like they are going to be nuclear attack profile, and people might not wait around to see one until they hit to work out whether they are or not. And that's a problem. Perth also has a fairly decent one. Sydney has some decent yards. Melbourne, Adelaide as well. Yeah, they're quite far away. Yeah, exactly, Nathan. And also it's risk of intercept. If you're going with the bombers, long-range bombers, the HKs, H6s, risk of intercept, limited supply, all those things. If you're going with ballistic options, there's risk of miscommunication. Oh, are we trusting you that the ballistic missile you're firing at a city of an ally is a non-nuclear one, that you're aiming at their yard facilities, or are we going to think it's nuclear? Oh, and that can lead to all sorts of... This is one of the reasons why when people say they can use ballistic missiles or tactical nukes, I go, no, you can't. You really can't. There are... No, people aren't that trusting. That's like, how are water drones shaping US naval plans? They're going to have a big impact on the areas where the US Navy has done away with its own capability to rely on allies, because a few years ago they had the 1,000-ship Navy, which was basically relying on allies for certain key areas, and drones are really allowing them to rebuild their own capabilities in it, because they're realizing that everyone needs to have their own capabilities in these things. I'd say also there is the problem of water. It depends on where you're talking about. In terms of the deep ocean, drones not yet having that much impact will have impact over time. If we're talking about littoral space, as in the close to shore, you are looking at weapon system proliferation to deal with them. Active defense and passive defense are both being looked at. Night security front. So if the early Type 988 Anglo-Dutch 3D radar had been housed in a dome on a ship, would that not be something its replacement, correct? It's going to depend on the radar. It's going to depend on the radar. It's going to depend on what they want. But if domes are useful assets. For a certain time, they are a really useful asset in trying to hide capabilities of radar. Hello, Dragon. In terms of trying to hide other things, they're useful. Johnny K, have you talked with Drac about his proposed Bismarck redesign or consider UAD episode on it? Curious just on a design viewpoint. We might do. We might do that. I think Drac will join me for the finishing off the UAD designs from the pre-trip for during the Historiathon. I think he might do that. So what ship in the Royal Navy fleet would be the best to use as a testbed for an early combat information center? A cruiser. You've got enough space to evaluate it properly. You can basically, these things always want to try and test them on a ship where you've got space to play around with it, so you can learn what really matters and how it needs to be shaped before you can try and shrink something down. The amount of times I see people try to go, oh, we've got to try this out, we'll try it on the smallest and cheapest thing we can possibly put on, and they go, it doesn't work, and the answer is, of course it doesn't work, you haven't got enough space. Try on something which is too big, and then scale it down. It's easier to scale things down than scale things up. Because in exercise, if you're scaling up, you've got only about 5 people running around it, you haven't got enough space. You need a CIC which at least has about 30 people in it to work out if it's going to work. Nathan D, if a major power, US or UK, were to bring back battleships, what do you think the best, most cost-effective way would be, and how would they be different from last generation? Okay, so look. As I keep saying, what we're actually keep talking about is a cruiser, but for some reason, cruiser is a bad and dirty term which you cannot use in modern politics. And trust me,
It's imperialist.
Look, here's the fun thing. I think we can all agree, like him or dislike him, the most anti-political correct president the United States have had in recent times has been Donald Trump.
No, he's politically correct. He just has a different textbook he pulls out of.
Well,
and I will fight you in a Denny's parking lot on this one.
Okay, but okay. With that being said, he still doesn't use the phrase cruiser. It's still a scary word for even American politicians to say. Cruiser. What is wrong with the word cruiser? But anyway, leaving that to one side, and that fun one, and the fact that you're claiming Donald Trump is politically correct is interesting, but maybe that's different, and maybe it's a difference in terms of British viewings of different politically correct versus American ones.
He is politically correct for the right wing of America. His whole policies are about being politically correct for the right wing of America. It's just a different flavor, politically correct. He's still politically correct, though.
Mm-hmm. But saying that, okay, there is the thing is about the large ships we're talking about is that it's a realization that wars aren't going to be short. I think that's one of the things is we're talking about building bigger ships anyway because we need more depth, but we need more depth and magazine space. Which means you need more VLS cells, and it also means you need to start working out how to reload ships at sea. And the reality is, if we're looking at a modern conflict and looking at it, we've got Japan's building cruisers. Japan is actually building cruisers. Their next two ships are called cruisers and they're classified as cruisers. And they've gone for ships which have an overwhelmingly deep VLS punch and deep magazine space, and they're carrying a lot of missiles and a lot of capabilities. What you're looking at is a ship more on the lines of what we would call Age of Sail, large warship, than possibly what we would consider a dreadnought style or even a pre-dreadnought style battleship, where the weight of armor is armored against equivalent weaponry. And this is an example I tend to agree with Drak to an extent. I would say what you're going to have is armoring around key spaces like engineering, like CIC, a command cockpit, spaces internal to the hull. I think it's going to be the all-or-nothing armor taken to the extreme, where you have the armoring around the core inside the hull, which you need to keep the vessel afloat, and which you need to have guarantee operations. And that armoring is going to be internal. And the reason is because basically you need those things to be functioning. And you might also have brakes in the hull which are armored, so that if you get hit anywhere, okay, you lose that section, but you don't lose the other sections. And I could see it being to the point of which it's basically a case of, okay, so this vessel is going to be able to, and nothing small knit's going to be able to beat it, with small weapons and light things and small VLS, or small drones dropping grenades are going to be able to damage this ship realistically. Fine. But it's got a lot of weapon systems on it. And it's going to be going far more on, okay, you can fire 5 or 6 anti-ship missiles, or maybe 8 anti-ship missiles. I can fire 40 in one go. I've got hundreds of surface-to-air missiles. I've got lasers. I've got rail guns. I've got all these things. And I do think it's the railgun tech which is specifically driving a lot of this, because one of the things I've noticed is that railguns have moved from being an offensive weapon to a defensive weapon very quickly, and suddenly people are looking at them. Now, I would say one of the problems we also got into is that there has been a natural scale increase in terms of capabilities and requirements into what we call frigates and destroyers. They've gone up. They're basically, but as I keep telling people, all modern warships are pretty much cruisers in peacetime. Their function is defined. Their naming is designed by their wartime function, not their peacetime role. Peacetime role, they're all cruisers. Which is probably why ultimately the ship designation which we should be going for the new supership will be battle cruiser, because it'll be a cruiser in peacetime, like the destroyers and the frigates are cruisers in peacetime, but it'll be a battleship in wartime. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I could not resist. But leaving that to one side, what we're basically talking about is building a ship which in wartime is going to have enough firepower and enough capability that it can carry a battle. And we have been reliant on carriers doing that realistically since World War II, and they still are the best ones because they're the only ones we can restock at sea of the options. But the thing is, there aren't enough carriers anymore. We're kind of in the situation as they were in the run-up to World War II, when there just weren't enough battleships due to treaties anymore. So the battleships can no longer carry those things. And because aircraft are sufficiently complex, even drones are sufficiently complex, that to maintain and supply them is actually quite difficult. In the volume you need for sustaining enough vessel operations, you actually are looking at going, okay, we need to do something else. Now, here's my point. I would prefer Britain actually build, okay, some very large Type 83s, but I would also like some SSGN versions of the Dreadnought class. I think SSGNs are far more short-term, at least. Until we get railgun tech and laser tech down a bit better, I think SSGNs are the better way to go for these large VLS systems. And that doesn't necessarily make me popular, because some people see that as me endorsing as the only way the world is the navies are going to survive, being underwater, and that's not the case. I just see that as the viable system. We're talking about a warfighting tool here. And I've got a whole lecture coming up about building for winning the peace, procuring for peace in terms of how you do it, and that I'm going to be doing at King's College London on November the 13th, and I have been tweeting out links to it, and you can attend online if you want, and you can attend in person if you want. It's a public lecture at King's. And I'm going to be talking about ships and what we should be procuring in the submarines and all those systems, and how we should be procuring them, and what we should be procuring in terms of procuring for peace. In terms of conflict management, in terms of deterrence, in terms of how we should actually be running procurement. And yeah, at the moment the SSGN is the better fit for those things. But cruisers are, yeah. Well, Grant Walker, as I say, look what modern frigates and destroyers are doing in peacetime. They are acting as cruisers. Yeah, Paul, if you were to design a new Type 83, what would you put on and in the hull? Oh, I've got a whole paper with Drac on this one, but at some point it's going to come out. But basically, my starting point would be 198 VLS cells, and I'd work from there. No, 190. Well, 192 VLS cells probably, actually. 192. And probably a good 32 box launchers for things like Naval Strike Missile. A lot of aircraft capacity and a lot of other things, because in this way I'd want it to be powerful enough that it turns up and it does set the tone. Best view so far on the trip. Best view so far on the trip. Probably from the Mercure Hotel in Yokosuka over the bay. Looking out over all their ships. It's rather cute. Is Discord still working?
Yes.
Dragon?
Yes. Dragon's muted.
Indeed, muted. I live.
That's good.
I've just been waiting.
Oh, good.
Hidden Foxo, Crouching Dragon.
Yeah.
No, no, I'm not Ursula Creed. I can't hide a warlord titan behind a bush.
I've had a really dumb idea recently. Build a small force of elite guard to ally into my Marines. But I know that way lies madness, so I'm trying to not do it.
Walter Brodus, the reason you don't go with the Arsenal ship is you're going for a ship which can do more than just lug missiles around. It's also got to be able to do the presence mission and diplomatic visiting, and it's going to have a range of weapon systems. An Arsenal ship literally is just a missile truck. This is one of the things why you get into the whole debate of whether aircraft carriers are the real Arsenal ships and all these things going on. Basically, also an Arsenal ship doesn't have its own sensors or anything like that as well. So an Arsenal ship literally is just a missile truck which turns up and connects in with the other sensors and ships. And the moment you start adding on the sensors, you go, okay, so I've got all the sensors, I've got all missiles, I've got all the teams to maintain them. Okay, now if I add on. Now adding on guns and adding on rail guns or whatever system you're adding on helicopters, it's not that much more, and I've got a cruiser. And a cruiser is far more diplomatically useful for presence missions for conflict management than an Arsenal ship. So basically, once you're talking about that level, yeah. Also, Arsenal ship, you should be talking a minimum of 400 to 500 BLS cells, not 192. Nice to front. So if the British Empire reaches Des Moines cruisers size by the end of the 1920s or in the 1930s, what from the heavy cruiser construction gets transferred to light cruiser construction, cruiser build? They're all light cruisers. Okay, the counties are light cruisers. As far as the British are concerned, when they're building them, they are light cruisers. So, yeah, they're all in there. Basically, be a next generation of 9.2-inch gun cruisers, so would be the heavy cruisers. But everything which is 10,000 tons or less or something like that is a cruiser. Is a light cruiser at this point. Which is your favourite country you've travelled to for naval history? Okay, I'm really liking Japan. I really do like Japan. Australia and Canada, though, have Haida and Daring. Haida and Vampire. They have a Treble and a Daring class. So, I'm sorry. Probably Canada, literally for sitting in Hamilton, Ontario, and staring at Haida.
Can I be cheeky and say Canada because it's the only country I've traveled to for naval history?
Mm-hmm. Did you manage to? We did get some good views of Fuji from the train. Polymus, if the Curtis SB2C Helldiver had been the SB2C for free or later, how many other mods would the RN want? It's going to depend on circumstance. The main problem for the Helldiver is when it comes into service, most people are starting to move away from Dive Bomber. Walter Brodus, did the Royal Marines and Royal Navy have an official birthday? No, but kind of they kind of used Trafalgar Night as their kind of birthday. 21st of October is usually used pretty much. Fleet Air Arm used Taranto. But yeah. Pretty much nice to go. Everything post Hawkins are light cruisers. The trouble is with the Royal Navy is, well, how do I put this politely? There's also a debate as to when it was actually formed. That's the fun thing. There is a debate. There's a whole argument, it's a whole argument as to whether it goes back to Alfred the Great or even earlier. It's basically found officially we tend to date it to being 1546 founded, and again there's a whole debate about that because it's founded technically by Henry VIII. But there had been other organizations a lot earlier, and the actual founding is sort of a process rather than an actual date. So yeah, we tend to just use Trafalgar Night. That's the thing. The Royal Navy's old enough to fudge its own birthday. It's reached that age. I do love people sometimes with questions. They come with now. Someone just asked this question on the Argentine plans for the Falklands War, and Ed McFly, big message to me: why in San Carlos water no barrage balloons or no improvised flagships? No barrage balloons because they didn't have any to actually send down there, and again, it's the same with the improvised flagships. They don't have the time, or the war doesn't last long enough. The Falklands War doesn't last long enough for them to actually get those things down there, and for them to build them and get them down there. Yeah. It was an interesting thing. Never asked the Royal Navy how old it is yet. You know, it's measured in centuries. Counterface, is the reason why we keep using battleships instead of cruisers the same as why navies keep calling new ships for frigates when they are destroyers? Because it's easy to sell to politicians, pretty much. Basically, my argument these days often is that a ship which is most frigates being built, especially by the larger navies in the world, are not frigates. They are cruisers with ASW capabilities. Most destroyers are cruisers with air defense capabilities, sometimes general purpose capabilities, and most ships larger than that are basically cruisers. They are designed to fight everything, again, like a cruiser. We'll see what happens.
That's because the United States Navy was formed prior to
the United States. Yes, that is, yes, that is the fun thing, Castner. The United States Navy actually existed before the United States.
It's the same thing with the Marines. The United States, because the United States has been called the United States for longer than there has legally been a United States.
Yeah.
Because before we had the current Constitution, which is 1787? Question mark?
Yeah.
We had the Articles of Confederation.
We've got about another half hour, Paul, so basically let's get another 5 to 6 questions.
So we had the Continental Army, which then got at some points turned over for the United States Army once Congress authorized that, but the Navy was the holdover from the Continental Navy and then the Navy under the Articles of Confederation into the Navy under the U.S. Constitution.
It's fun. And let's be honest, the modern Royal Navy actually, owes more to the settlement created during the interregnum than the actual Navy of Henry VIII, but we don't talk about that in Britain either.
We also almost never talk about the Articles of Confederation, which is interesting.
It is fun. People like to be selective about what they remember in their history.
Both tenses are correct, Steve. We're not quite to the United States were or was yet.
Give it a bit longer.
I wasn't going to say that, but, you know, I guess I'm already on a list, so I can say I was thinking it.
Look, in nicest way, America will survive. It's the one thing I am certain of. The interesting thing will be, is that how your political system will evolve. There you go. Sorry, I was just remembering my other strap. Do I need to take any of this with me today? Probably do need to take my notepad with me, so I actually will take the laptop bag with me. Oh. The amount of weird stuff that comes out of my bags. On these trips. Ah, there it is! Oh good, I can charge my watch before I go. Oh. I've been having fun in Japan. There is lots of interesting stuff here. And also, I got to see Dr. Dan geek out over a Gundam. He really did geek out over a Gundam. Weirdest fact you learned in Japan? Nothing. Unfortunately, I think that's I don't. Weirdest fact. I'm not sure if this is weird, but it's kind of strange getting into a lift and realizing this is the first country I've been to where their measure of human size is very different than the one I'm used to. Because I get into a lift and it gives a weight limit and it tells me a number of people, and I'm sitting there going, no, that will not accommodate that many people. It will not. And then I realize, oh, they're talking about Japanese people. It's kind of fun when you realize, okay, so the average Japanese weighs 2/3 of me. Okay, all right. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah. Yeah, that's I'm only 105 kilos. I'm only 10 kilos overweight, and now it's not fair.
Stop sending your kilos over here. I keep picking the dang things up.
Now, Poseidon 737, Canada decides and are committed to building 4 cruisers to support the coming river class assets. How might these cruisers look, and how might other NATO nations react? Would they follow suit? Honestly, they would probably be looking at something along the size of the Zumwalt class and old Type 83s, which are coming from the Royal Navy. And they would probably buy them. They would probably buy a design from elsewhere, or they might go to the Japanese and buy from them. They're already looking at buying their submarines. So probably would go to the Japanese and buy them. And NATO's reactions if they follow, and would they follow suit? Probably some would. Honestly, there is part of me wonders if all this debate about battleships is actually to give cover for people to start buying cruisers. This is just me spitballing, and this is entirely me in the dark, cynical recess of mind. But sometimes people debate one thing to get something else through. And as we've already discussed, people aren't talking about cruisers because that's politically impossible. Well, the thing is, if you want to build large surface combatants, you don't want to, and you want to get them built, well, if for some other reason, let's say the phrase battleship has suddenly become more politically charged than cruiser, you can build cruisers. And what people expect from a cruiser is very different than what they expect from a battleship. But that's a whole level of media and public manipulation, which I'm sure no one would be doing, and I really do think is conspiracy theory of me to even think, but it's just in the dark recesses of my brain, it's going through, going, okay. And that might be because I spend too much time in the 1920s and 30s of the Royal Navy, where a HMS Unicorn is called a forward aviation support ship, and it's definitely not an aircraft carrier, and things like that. It might be that. That's, causing me to be suspicious of this all. Digi10 Bubble. This might be more than a Q&A question, and I think this might be your first question, as I don't remember your name before. If you have asked questions before and I've missed it, I do apologise. But thank you for asking your first question. This might be more than a Q&A question, but what was the emphasis in the French Reconstructionist Navy after World War II, especially given the ever-pressing need to reconstruct the state? Independence. self-sufficiency. That's always been the focus of the French Navy and the French government in terms of defence procurement, and they've managed to keep it. They managed to keep the independence. It's not always produced the best equipment, but it's produced independent equipment, and it's made it very. They've all been very capable.
And also, it's a great way to help kickstart rebuilding your heavy industry.
Yes, it is, and that's the thing. The French have always been about building self-sufficiency. 9681. If the Royal Navy woke up to find 1 Eagle Incomparable, 4 Hermes G3, and 3 Eagle Admiral conversions, 3 Courageous, 1 Hermes, an Eagle, and Argus in 1921, how far does our own carrier aviation advance? By that point, you have the Air Ministry in control of procurement. But if you've got that many large carriers, the Royal Navy is going to want to fill them, especially if they don't have to pay for them. So you're probably going to find that the Fleet Air Arm gets independence rather soon. Because if you've got... Let's be honest, 15 carriers, that's a healthy air group. That's going to be several hundred aircraft. In fact, well, they're probably going to be about 90, so that's down them. That's going to be about 90 as well. Then you've got those at 60s. And 8 times 90, 720. Yeah, you're talking about 1,000 aircraft. The Royal Fleet Air Arm is going to be larger than the Royal Air Force. That's going to be that's going to be a problem. But it's basically going to mean the Fleet Air Arm is going to go independent, and the Royal Air Force is going to be and Britain's going to look at the Royal Air Force as its second air force for most of the interwar period.
Oops.
In answer to the question of Casnea, last month there were some headlines about the Denmark considering getting counterpace. Last month there were some headlines about Denmark considering looking into getting the British Type 31 frigates. How they hold up for the needs the Danish Navy have, considering the German, the Green Arctic. Counterface. The lovely Danish produced a lovely frigate, which is called the Iver Hoodfelt design. The Iver Hoodfelt design was then modified to become the Type 31. So basically, if the Danish buy the Type 31, they are buying the Mark II variant of the Iver Hoodfelt, which is their existing frigate. Thank you, Digi10 Bubble. Thank you for being live. Oh, I hope you enjoy it. Talk of Kings. I hope a lot of people get that, because it'll be fun. I'll get it online. It's going to be a fun talk. But, yeah, so, Counterface, basically, if the Danish buying the Iver Hoodfelt, buying the Type 31s, is basically them buying the next generation Iver Hoodfelt. Night do you think the second London Naval Treaty that between January 1st, 1931 and December 1st, 1936, the British would have built at the rate of 4, then 4, then 3, then 4? They'd just build 4. They'd be ordering 4 ships. They just keep doing it at a rate of 4. Because that's what they can do. And it's not going to cost them anything to do it. Especially if they start earlier, it'd be amazing if you start the construction at First London Naval Treaty instead of Second London. You start construction then. There is so much more industry and infrastructure surviving. You don't have the same issues you have with the King George V's. You don't have the same issues. You can just keep building. And you can order 4 every financial year quite happily if you want to. But as I've said before, my strong suspicion is that if you had a London Naval Treaty, if First London Naval Treaty was allowed construction, it'd basically go, right then, the Royal Navy's allowed to construct. These ships have a shelf life of 20 years. You're allowed to have 5 new ones. Britain's allowed to have 5 new ones every 5-year period. Japan is, let's say, America's allowed to have 5 every new ones in every 5-year period. Japan's allowed to have 3. France and Italy are allowed to have 2.5 new ones in every 5-year period, and then you get a construction base on that. So the British probably actually wouldn't be ordering 4 a year; they'd be ordering 1 a year, or they might be they probably would order them in batches of 2. So you get 2 ordered every other year, and then they go, yeah, it squares out, okay? We are getting 10 over a 10-year period. We've just ordered them in batches of 2. It would work. It would work. Right then, with that being said, it is now 7:45.
7:45.
In my time. So it's last 10 minutes, and then I'm going to go grab breakfast before I have to run out the door and get to the train station for 8:45, and possibly get my 2 colleagues, who share the hotel with me, up and awake.
Is Fleet one of them?
Yes.
Roger, we'll begin the pinging.
Don't worry, I'm fairly sure he's already watching this, because he's deathly afraid that I will tell our HR representative, Foxo, for Shipshape, exactly what happened to me yesterday at his hands.
So Foxo, that means we implore you to join the chat, so this way I can know and get at least one ray of sunshine in this otherwise questionable day.
We're currently busy discussing the history of offshore oil drilling.
Well, yeah, I might stay on Discord for a bit and chat with you all a bit quickly before I go wake them up. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed live. If you do want... thank you, Jack Ray. That's very kind of you. Hope you're well. Keep meaning to message you and check in. You're okay. I'm hoping to actually... I'm hoping, when everything's settled and sorted out, I will finally be able to do a trip to the States and actually see some people in the States. It's going to depend on Historiathon in November and various other things, but it's going to depend on the house sorting itself out. We're still not... The house sale still hasn't gone through. So we're still having fun with that. We've signed all the documents. Everything's signed on our end now. We're just waiting on some things being signed by the other people, and it's just... the one good thing is it's meant I haven't had to pay the mortgage this month. The bad thing is it's cost me an extra $5,000 because the interest rate on the bridging loan, which is how we moved house, is $12,500 a month. So, yeah. That's my scenario at this moment. It's expensive. Life is fun. Our lawyer is good. But unfortunately, we have to keep paying our lawyers to deal with their lawyers. So, our lawyer has sorted everything out, but we still are still costing us money, because every time their lawyers muck up, we have to pay them as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Hope you all have a good time. Hope you all enjoyed, and there will be another of these done from Japan. There will be another of these done from Japan, because I don't leave Japan. I don't actually fly out till the 22nd. So, well, actually, I fly out at midnight on... Well, actually, I have to fly out at 0020 hours on the 22nd. So, I will be doing another of these from Japan pretty much after everyone else has gone home or is going home. Because I have an extra day in Japan versus the colleagues, because it was actually cheaper for me to stay an extra day in Japan than it was to get the flight home that day. So, yes, there will be another of these hours. And, yeah, I've bought 2 suitcases with me, and I think this is going to be the last. This is going to be the last outing for Big Pink, because its wheels are starting to come off. Take care, everyone. Have fun, and thank you for being here. And thank you for the help. I hope you enjoyed, and hope you enjoyed the videos. Toodles.